Howdy! Today's video will focus on the conic section parabolas. As you see right here, we have a double nap cone intersected by a plane. Now this plane is intersecting at the center of the base, and it's parallel to the other side of our cone. Now the parabola is the set of all points in a plane that are the same distance from a given point called the focus and a given line called the directrix. It's created by a plane intersecting a double nap cone through the center of one base with the plane parallel to the other to one side of the cone, which I discussed on the previous slide. So vertex, focus, and directrix are very important vocabulary words. Now, let me go ahead and explain the definition of a parabola. It says given a point called the focus, so here's a point, and a line called the directrix, so here's a line. So pretty much the set of all points on a plane that are the same distance from a given point called the focus and a given line called the directrix. So the same distance from this point and this line. So pretty much one of those points is going to be right here in the middle. That point is the same distance from your focus and the same distance from your directrix. Okay, so let's go ahead and say this point right here is the same distance as well, because this point here is the same distance from your focus and the same distance from your directrix, as well as this point right here. Same distance, same distance. So we have 3 points to our parabola. Now we can go ahead and draw our parabola. So go ahead and from your vertex, this is called your vertex. That right there, the point in between your focus and your directrix is your vertex. So go ahead and from your vertex, connect your dots together to create your parabola. So this right here is the focus. This right here is your vertex, and this line is your directrix. Next, characteristics. Our parabola only has one square term. So if you're given an equation and you're asked to determine if that equation is a parabola, you'll know it's a parabola if it only has one square term in it. Also, it has one line of symmetry. Your parabola only has one line of symmetry. Next. So our general equation. We've seen this equation multiple times. This equation is called the quadratic equation. We've seen this multiple times on the previous 6 weeks. Now we have our standard equations. Our two standard equations, one we're going to have x squared, so we have x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k, and then one with y squared, we have y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. Whenever you have x squared and you're asked which way it opens, whenever p is positive and you have your x squared, it's going to open up. Whenever x is squared and p is negative, it's going to open down. So p, given this p here, that's the p I'm talking about. So whenever y is squared and p is positive, it's going to open right. When p is negative, it's going to open down. Our focus, that point that's given for a parabola, is going to be, whenever x is squared, it's going to be h comma k plus p. And when y is squared, it's going to be h plus p comma k. Our directrix, that line that determines our parabola, our directrix is going to be y equals k minus p whenever x is squared. Whenever y is squared, it's going to be x equals h minus p. Our axis of symmetries. Whenever x is squared, it's simply just x equals h. And whenever y is squared, it's simply just y equals k. Now for both equations, our vertex will always be hk. So it will always be hk. Take the opposite of what you're given. So if you have a -1, -2, your vertex is going to be 1, 2. Now p, that very important variable for our parabola, is the distance of the focus and the directrix from the vertex. I'll go ahead and explain this later after this slide. Now, 4p is the distance from one side of the parabola to the other side, with the focus as the segment's midpoint. So I'll go ahead and explain this as well. If you need to finish writing this down, go ahead and pause the video. So, going back to our picture, let's explain p and 4p. So p was defined as the distance from your focus to your vertex and your vertex to your directrix. So this distance here and this distance here is p. Now, 4p was said to be the distance between between your parabola with your focus as your midpoint of the segment. So that means that this distance right here is 4p. Now, whenever we're asked to graph our parabola, we're going to have our focus, our vertex, and our directrix given. We're going to find those very easily. The next hardest parts would be to find our endpoints. Now, from our focus to our endpoint is going to be half of 4p. So half of 4p would just be 2p. So this distance right here and right here is just 2p. Keep that in mind. To the left and the right of your focus will just be the length 2 times p. Now, the identifiable features that we need to point out when graphing, we need to find p, we need to find our vertex, we need to know which way it opens, we then need to find, from our vertex and p, our focus, our directrix, and our axis of symmetries. Our vertex will always be hk, p would just be 4p divided by 4 equals p. Focus and directrix depend on whether or not x is squared or y is squared, and we only have one line of symmetry. So here's our first example. The first thing I want you to find, first off is just to find p. Now p would just be 4p divided by 4. Now given our standard equation, which would be x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus 1, 4p equals 8. So we would take negative 8 divided by 4, which would be negative 2. So p equals negative 2. Now let's go ahead and find our vertex. Our vertex would just be hk, and hk is this and this. Remember to take the opposite sign. So our hk would just be positive 4, positive 1. Now we would need to find our focus. Our focus, given x squared, looking at your notes, would just be h comma k plus p. So that would be h is 4, and then k is 1, p is negative 2. So 1 plus negative 2 is 1 minus 2, which is just negative 1. So your focus is 4, negative 1. Your directrix, which is a line, given your notes, is just going to be y equals k minus p. K is 1, p is negative 2. So 1 minus negative 2 is 1 plus 2, which would just be 3. So now we have our p, vertex, focus, directrix. Oh, we also need to know which way it opens. Now, since x is squared and p is negative, looking at our notes, we would know that it opens down. Now, we need to find our axis of symmetry. Since x is squared, it's simply just going to be x equals h, and h equals 4. So we found everything we needed to find, so let's go ahead and graph. Let's first graph our vertex of 4, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Focus is 4, negative 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 1. And our directrix is at y equals 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we need to finish our two other points of our parabola, so we can have 3 points to make our parabola. So remember, this distance from the left and the right of our focus is going to be 2 times p. So if p is 2, then 2 times 2 is 4. So from our focus, we're going to go left and right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we can make our parabola. Then lastly, our axis of symmetry is x equals 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our axis of symmetry. Alright, moving on. Write the equation of the parabola given your focus at 1, 2, and your directrix at x equals negative 3. So let's go ahead and plot these two things, okay? So your focus is 1, 2, and your directrix is at x equals negative 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now, beginning of the PowerPoint, I said that given our focus and our directrix, your vertex is going to be right in the middle of the two. So right in the middle would be halfway between. So this distance is 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of that is 2. So from your focus, go 2 towards your directrix. 1, 2. So this is your vertex. So your vertex would just be negative 1, 2. So hk equals negative 1, 2. Now it's asking us to find the equation. The equation, you need to find your hk as well as as well as p. So p, h, and k are needed for your equation of a parabola. Now since p is your distance from your directrix to your vertex and your vertex to your focus, that distance is just 2. So p would equal 2. So now we can just plug in. Since our graph opens right, looking at our notes, we know that our equation is going to have y squared. So our standard form is going to be y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. Plug in what we found. Y minus k is 2, so we'll have y minus 2 squared equals 4p. P is 2, 4 times 2 is 8. X minus h is negative 1, minus negative is positive, so we'll have x plus 1. And there is your equation. And that's all, folks. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully this cleared up anything or give you all more confidence in what you're doing. Next video will be over hyperbolas.